We are live. Well, hello, Eddie. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome.
We're welcome for those of you. We're going to just give it a little bit of time for people to sort of join before we run off. But if you are interested in learning a little bit about, firstly, what even is Hacktoberfest? How do you get involved? Where do you even get started? Then this is definitely the right place for you, because Hacktoberfest is a fantastic thing to help sharpen up your skills. It's good for like your CV or your resume. And generally just a really cool thing to be part of. You've been part of Hacktoberfest a few times, Eddie, right?
Yes, I've got all the t-shirts to prove it for the last, I don't know, X amount of years. And yeah, it has really opened so many doors for me. And I really hope it helps other people as well. I know it will, but they do need to invest a bit of time and effort into it, a bit like going to the gym. You can't just, I don't know, get a personal trainer and watch them train. You actually have to do it yourself. That's why we're here. So think of us like personal trainers. So we're here to help all of you not only get started in open source, but also to make the most of it. How you can be efficient, because we're all quite busy and we don't all have a lot of time. So let's try and be efficient and get the maximum output.
I like that thinking. We are open source personal trainers.
The new job title.
Yeah. Very cool.
We've got to see people joining. Hi, Razvan. Hi, Saf. How you doing?
I'm curious to know, are people watching familiar with Hacktoberfest? Is this your first one? Have you done it before? Yeah, just be curious to gauge your familiarity with Hacktoberfest, because I know some people have heard about it, but they've never actually contributed as part of it. And other people are like veterans. They've done it for many, many years. They've been waiting for this moment for the last couple of weeks to get started.
No, that's true, right? Some of us are really excited. Some people have found some issues they want to work on, but they didn't start on it yet. They're going to start it today so that it counts towards Hacktoberfest. I think one thing I'd love for people to take away is Hacktoberfest is great. Open source is amazing. But Hacktoberfest is not just open source is not just for October. Please start as soon as possible and please keep it going. And that's where you get the maximum value. If you're just going to create, we'll go into the details of the Hacktoberfest in a moment, but if you're just doing it just to create the 6 pull requests during the month of October, you're not going to get the most out of it.
I'm going to go back to your analogy about going to the gym. If you only go to the gym for October, you're not going to feel those rewards right going forward. It's going to be a very short burst, but you're not going to necessarily get that long-term impact that you get from contributing to open source over an extended period of time.
Exactly. And another example is I like to use is brushing your teeth. Like, you're not just going to brush your teeth for October and then the rest of the year don't do it. But in October, you'll do it extra. Like, you do like 2 hours a day to brush your teeth. No, you should do it little and often, and that's the maximum benefit. So same with open source.
That's a good way of putting it. It does make me remind me that I do need to go to the dentist. It's good to get those things checked. Cool. Looks like we've got a few people joining. We'll give it a few more minutes, and then we'll start to explain everything you need to know to get started, because the same with brushing your, well, I guess not brushing your teeth, but let's say the gym example. New things can be scary, can be overwhelming. It can feel complicated to get started. The example I'm going to quickly use is with Kestra, for example. You go, there is literally hundreds of repositories here. How do I even know what on earth are we supposed to do with this? Don't worry, we're going to explain it all. It's going to all become clear by the end of this. You'll be not just with Kestra, but other big projects where they've got multiple repositories. It should seem a little less daunting. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll explain everything you need to know. And I've actually just seen another funny comment of, should we not be scared of open source as we are for the dentist? Open source shouldn't be scary. The dentist, 50-50.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the dentist at all. So
no, I am a big fan of open source though.
That is definitely true. Yes.
Cool. So I reckon we should jump into things, Eddie. What do you reckon?
Let's do it. Should we talk about the things we're going to cover today? And we've got we've got issues, we've got best practices. I want to show a contribution that I did. Will's going to go through the repos, the Kestra repos, and we're going to answer all your questions. What else have we got, Will?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up pretty well. And so while Eddie and I are discussing all these different things, feel free to put your questions in the channel, in the comments. We're keeping an eye on. Me and Eddie are both looking at them as you speak. So if you've got any questions, want to interrupt us, just let us know. We'll be keeping an eye on it. But we'll make sure there's some time at the end as well, so we can answer any questions you've got. But the biggest question that everyone probably has is, what even is Hacktoberfest? Eddie, this is not your first Hacktoberfest. You've been involved, but what is all this noise about? What does it mean?
Well, open source runs the world. Like, we all know that. There is, even our parents are using open source without even realizing. I mean, there's the open source project curl that's in most cars, in most kitchen appliances, and it's even gone to Mars. So open source is not just taking over the world, it's taking over the universe, well, at least our solar system, at least anyway. And it's great for everyone to get involved. And like you mentioned earlier, it's a great way to grow our network without trying to network with people. Like, it's more natural. And it's a great way to improve our skills. It's a great way to stand out from the crowd, especially with AI now. There's a lot of more people getting into the tech space, which is great. But one of the downsides is we don't want to kind of get lost in that. We want to stand out. And open source is a great way to do that. And so Hacktoberfest is specifically for this month, so we really want to encourage people to get involved in open source. Open source should be all year round, like we said, a bit like brushing your teeth or going to the gym. But this month, everyone makes an extra effort to get new contributors to their projects. That's what we're here to do. We really want to help you. And I see F8, Saf, hopefully I pronounced the name correctly, has asked a really good question, and we will come back to that question in a moment. For Hacktoberfest, what are the rules that we've got, Will? I see you got the website up in front of us, which is great. It used to be 4 pull requests. Now it's 6, and the repo has to be participating. So it needs the topic on the repo to have Hacktoberfest. And the pull request needs to be accepted, and it needs to be on a repo that isn't, how can I say it in a kind of a PC way? It needs to be in a repo that's a proper repo. It's not designed just, I don't know, a glossary of terms, which is a great repo. It could be beneficial, but they're trying to reduce those types of like kind of repos and have them more repos with more longevity and more active. I think is probably the best way to say it. Maybe, Will?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and at the end of the day, like, you'll get more out of Hacktoberfest by contributing to these sort of bigger, well, not necessarily bigger, but projects that are not necessarily just aimed at Hacktoberfest, right? Projects that exist in their own way, and Hacktoberfest happens to also happen at the same time. So it allows you to get the most, because at the end of the day, you're going to learn how to contribute to bigger projects. You're going to learn about how you can contribute to a code base that you didn't necessarily write any of the code for. And it also helps you understand how to interact with others as well. So there's lots of useful skills to get from this. And so while it might seem like you want to do whatever you can to get 6 pull requests as easily as possible, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the most value out of Hacktoberfest. So definitely take that into consideration when you're looking for various issues to contribute to. Easy issues don't necessarily mean you'll get the most impact. They're definitely good to start with, but maybe on your 6th pull request, you want to stretch yourself a little bit, try something a little bit harder, right?
I think that's such a great way to put it. Absolutely. When you first go to the gym, you're going to start off with a lighter weight, but later on, 6 sessions later, you want to be putting a bit more, excuse me, a bit more resistance. Exactly. Actually challenge yourself a bit more. You're not going to do that from day one, because then you're going to be in pain. You're not going to like the gym. You want to set yourself up for success, but you also want that challenge. So it's finding that balance. I see some people doing the opposite. Rather than going for a good first issue, they go to the most popular repo on GitHub, something like Kubernetes or React, and they want to contribute, and they find it really hard, and they say, oh, open source is too difficult. So I think, just like Will said, you start off with something easy, get started, get to know the project, get it set up locally, get to know the community and the maintainers, and then challenge yourselves further each time. And that brings me to my first tip, which is don't jump around projects too much. I see a lot of people doing 6, say, pull requests, but they'll be on 6 different repos. And I think you'll face the same challenge almost on every repo, which is getting familiar with it, getting it set up, and understanding their their requirements for the project. So I recommend sticking to less projects and doing it better. Therefore, you're more familiar with that project and also the other people who will be reviewing your pull request.
Yeah, I remember when I was in school and I read something on the internet that open source contributing to open source is really good for your resume and CV. And I thought, great, let me go and contribute to like Google or like Chromium or like it's one of these big projects I've heard of. I opened up the source code and was like, I have absolutely no idea what on earth is going on. And then that put me off. And I didn't end up contributing to open source for a few years after that point. So yeah, don't be like me and think, yeah, I'm going to go contribute to Kubernetes or whatever. Start small. Otherwise, it will put you off and you'll think that all open source projects are like that. And then before you know it, you've actually just back where you started. So start small, gradually work up to it. And to help you find these projects, like Eddie said, they have to be a participating project in Hacktoberfest. And you can see here we've got this Hacktoberfest topic. If you click on that in the Kestra repository, for example, it should then give you all repositories that are currently using Hacktober. So here's Hugging Face have got a repository that's contributing to it. Axios from JavaScript, exactly, Microsoft Terminal. So some of these projects are big. You can see how many stars they are. Some of them less so. And you can probably filter by the number of stars as well. Most stars, you could do fewer stars. And so you could look at projects that have less stars as well. Some of these will be projects that are really, really small, but other ones might be sort of medium size. So there is something really for everyone. Eddie, do you have any sort of tips on how you can actually find some of these projects? I mean, there's 140,000 repositories here, but any other tips for finding good projects?
Yes, it's a great question. So I would also say to reduce that number and find good projects, I would say filter by language. If someone's specifically looking for Python or JavaScript, I think it's really good. Another thing you can search for, rather than just searching on GitHub for the topic, you could search for the label good first issue. And I recommend going to the advanced search because then you can filter by language, the label good first issue, and also filter by the project's been active in the last, say, 3 months or 1 month. You can then filter by certain stars. You might go, well, I want it to be semi-popular, but not too popular, between, say, 1 and 30,000 stars. So 1,000 and 30,000. Sorry, not 1 star, as in 1,000 and 30,000 stars. So there's certain filters that you can do. And as hey Praduma, how you doing? So Praduma is from Kestra as well, and Praduma just mentioned that keep an eye out on the Kestra repo because they are opening many good first issues for Hacktoberfest. So thank you so much, Praduma. That's awesome.
And going off of that, you can actually see, so I'm in the Kestra repository. We've got a main repository for the core product. So if you've ever used Kestra, this is where most of that logic comes from. It can be a little overwhelming, but the key thing is, right, there's lots of folders going on here. We can totally just ignore all of that right now. None of that's really that important right now. What we can do is go to issues. We can see that there are a few here that say good first issue. I'll make it a little bit bigger. We can click on that. And now I'm filtering by all of the issues. And as you can see, there is 69 good first issues that are open. Some of these are easier than others. So definitely spend your time looking through. So for example, here, there's one about command and control plus save. Keyboard shortcut doesn't work on edited flow. Let's click into that. You can see that it explains what's going on. Someone asked if they can work on this, and so they can get assigned. And the best bit is ask questions if you're not sure where this would be, because I right now wouldn't know where to look for this in the Kestra repository, but someone from the team might be able to point you in the right direction or tell you, oh, you'll find it in this part of the project. So you don't necessarily need to be able to understand what goes on in all these different folders. Some of it will be more self-explanatory than others, but sometimes it might be really overwhelming. Don't let that put you off though, because asking questions is a really important step to getting that first PR made, because at the end of the day, this is not your project. Some projects might want things done in a certain way, and so it's always best to just make sure that you're doing those things in the way the project wants or whatever. So projects are often very helpful, very eager to point you in the direction, support you. And so don't feel like you've got to try and drive blind. You can have them help you, nudge you in the right direction. give you some feedback as well. And then before you know it, they've got a really great contribution and you've made your first pull request to an open source project. So it's a win-win for everyone involved, really.
Exactly. And the maintainers on the project want you to succeed. So, if you do need some help, then do ask. I don't think people should ask for help where they can find it in, say, the GitHub documentation. But if it's project specific, then definitely do ask the maintainers. But remember, a lot of people are asking them questions, so you want to keep the noise down a bit. So by all means, ask them questions about their project, but don't get too generic about I have got an issue with this git command or something like that. Try and do a bit of research yourself, and with AI that can help a lot. I know I contributed to Kestra before I started there, like a couple of months ago, and it is a bit overwhelming at first, but I was so excited to find that issue, raise the pull request, and I'll take you through that shortly all as well and what I did. And I thought it was, fixing a bug. I thought it was a great contribution. I was really proud of it.
Awesome. I am looking forward to having a look at your contribution, Eddie. Now, another thing that you can do as well is like Kestra, for example, has a contributors channel on their Slack, and you can join their Slack from their website. I believe there's probably a link in the GitHub README. And Kestra is just one example. Plenty of these bigger open source projects have communities in Slack or Discord where you can it's a little bit easier to ask questions about the project, right? About specific things on getting the project set up, because it might be a project that's a little bit harder to run. That is one of the things you might run into with these bigger projects, is that it can be difficult to run them. Some projects are easier than others, but this is where asking questions here can be helpful, because again, the team wants you to succeed, right? Maintainers on these open source projects want you to succeed. And so if you are running into an issue, sometimes the issue you might be running into as well might be a bug. If you're unable to run it on your system, you might have discovered some useful feedback for the project. So just because you're maybe running into an issue doesn't necessarily mean that that means you need to give up. In fact, you might be useful, actually. So bear that in mind. Another thing as well is, as you can see at the top here, Kestra itself has got like a contributing guide. So other projects will have this too, where they'll have like information on how you can contribute, different ways you can contribute, and how to like build the project. So some of this will be on GitHub directly, and in the Kestra repository, you'll find some of this information in the, do we have one? Maybe we don't have one.
What contributing guide you do?
It's under the
It
.github
is,
folder.
yes.
Yeah, so a lot of projects will have this contributing.md file. That is your friend. Definitely worth giving that a read before you get started. Eddie, do you want to add a little more there?
Sure. I said, yes, you do. I should say, yes, we do. I'm still getting used to being part of the Kestra team. It's been a month today, actually. And I'm super excited to join the awesome team. But yes, as I say, you instead of us or we. So yes, I would say follow this. If you're doing a back-end contribution, your setup might be slightly different if you're doing a front-end contribution, because in the front end, you just want the back-end running. So do have a look at the contributing guide. It is separated into two. And F8 on YouTube, or Saf, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, asked a really good question. And it says that they're covering a backlog of good first issues with the area backend tag first. The issues have a specific Kestra version listed on the comments. Should I check out that specific version to fix the issue? That is a great question. If it hasn't been fixed, it should also be in the latest version as well. However, so I would say use the latest. Is what I would recommend. I don't know if Will agrees.
I would either use the latest or our develop image. So we have two images, right? The develop one is literally using the most up-to-date commit on the GitHub repository. So if the bug doesn't exist on develop, there's a really good chance that it's been fixed, or at least that's the hope. It might reappear. That's the thing with these big projects, that just because something is fixed doesn't necessarily mean it. Just because you can't reproduce it doesn't mean it's necessarily fixed. But you can see here that like it gets built and it will get automatically pushed, in this case, to Docker Hub, where you can then pull the image. So I typically use the develop image. Latest is also a pretty good one, because we want to make sure that that is a stable version, right? And so that is another good option to use too. But if it's an older version of Kestra, it matters less so, because we want to encourage people to use those more up-to-date versions that have the bug fixes in them, right?
Absolutely. And I want to take a quick break for a moment and tell everyone who's watching, thank you for being here. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. It really helps support the channel, and subscribe to the Kestra YouTube channel if you haven't already. And one last thing, as we're asking for favors, give the GitHub repo a star. I can't share a link to it, but hopefully Will can share a link to it in the chat.
I can link you to the repository. Here we go. There you go, everybody. Perfect.
Cool. Thank you.
Great idea.
Oh, this is a really good question. If this ties into one of the agenda items for today.
So, not using Docker at local setup is more developer friendly for me. So, I have an interesting. So, I do have a quick follow-up question for you. Are you not using Docker at all, or are you happy to use Docker as part of the development, as in not necessarily running Kestra from Docker Hub as a Docker image, but are you happy to use Docker at all? Because I have something that I think is fantastic when it comes to contributing to open source, because, like I said earlier, it can be a massive pain to run open source projects. Some of these bigger projects, not happy to use Docker. We'll come back to that in a minute, because there are ways around this. But it can be a massive pain to run open source projects. There's a lot of different dependencies. They're designed to work, like the dev teams, for example, the Kestra dev team primarily use Linux. I'm on a Mac. Does that mean I'm going to potentially run into some problems that they don't? Quite possibly. And they might not necessarily be able to help me where they're not familiar with Mac. But we do, thanks to someone who did a fantastic contribution earlier in the year, we have support for dev containers. Now, if you're not familiar with dev containers, and I believe, Eddie, this is a relatively new thing for you, so I'm excited to see your reaction to this.
I'm excited too.
Excellent. Basically, it lets you, let me open VS Code. So we've got VS Code here. I've cloned the Kestra repo, and I haven't done anything, right? I haven't installed anything. I haven't done any like setup commands. But you can see here in the bottom right-hand corner, VS Code has detected that we have a dev container configuration file. And what this is going to do is it's now going to attach our VS Code instance to a container. It's going to run a Docker file that's got all of the dependencies that Kestra requires to use of the correct version. And now we'll be able to run Kestra inside of that container, and it's going to have all the correct dependencies. Because for those of you who aren't familiar, Kestra is built in Java, primarily the backend specifically, front end built in Vue.js. Java, from my experience, sometimes it gets really unhappy about running in the wrong versions and whatnot. And it can be a bit annoying to try and install different versions, and then you've got to change your environment path and whatnot. Massive pain. But the dev container sort of solves that whole problem, because it isolates it from any dependencies you already have installed, and it just makes sure that you're running the correct ones of the correct versions, and there's no clashes because you've already got it installed of a different version. So if I just click this reopen in container, what it's going to do is now it's going to spin up the dev container, and it's going to run this for us inside of a container. Now, while that's running and I've got a container here, now I can just run commands inside this dev container, such as, run Kestra, and we can find a lot of that information in the README. We did have a question from someone of, what if I don't want to use Docker? Now, that's also perfectly doable. What I've done in the past is, because this is in the Kestra scenario, this is all using Java. You can build it using Gradle in the terminal. So what you can do is do /Gradle W, I think it is, and then like build. I do have the commands written down somewhere, because I do like to build Kestra myself sometimes. So let me just find those. Yeah, you can, if you navigate to the Kestra repository, you can do shadow jar, and that will build the whole project and give you a .jar file. Now, this can be a little bit annoying if you're making little changes and then you want to be able to run them, but this will then give you a .jar file that once you've run that, you'll get a little file that's called in the build.libs file. So you'll get build, and then there'll be a little libs one. I could just run that, actually. Let's just do that. Gradle w shadow jar, see if it runs. We'll let that run in the background. Hopefully that works. I've not tried this, but
I used make in the past, I think, with Kestra.
Okay, good to know.
There's some issues on the Mac though, because I didn't certain, I suppose, libraries we have on the Mac because it is Unix based, but was slightly different to what expecting Linux had to install those as well. So it was a bit harder than I thought.
I see. Okay, good to know. But yeah, what this will do is it will create in the build/libs folder a little .jar file that you can, well, just an executable that you can then just run, and that will spin up Kestra really easily. It won't have any plugins, so you will need to install those separately. But again, we can look at that. If you want us to talk about that during this stream, we can have a look at that a little bit later. But hopefully this will make me a nice little libs folder file. Maybe, hopefully. We'll leave that running in the background. But Eddie, while that's running, I'd love to hear from you because you contributed to Kestra before you were even like the thought of you being part of the Kestra team. That was like this all happened earlier in the year. You were just contributing to Kestra because we like had a chat with you and you found a bug and you thought, well, I could fix this. Why don't I just fix it? It's open source, I can just fix this bug.
And it gave me content. I made a video on it, so it actually gave me content as well. So it was like the expression we use here in the UK is 2 birds, 1 stone. So yeah, I thought, I'll fix this and I'll make a video of me fixing it and write a blog post. Actually, it's 3 birds, 1 stone. So that was really, really good. So let me share my screen and I can talk a little bit through it. So share. Here we go. Hopefully that looks good. Hopefully you see GitHub. Perfect. So let me go to the beginning. Right. So this was the issue on the Kestra repo, on the main Kestra repo. The problem was, so if I zoom in here, the problem was that in a sub flow, is that the right thing to say? I should know this. In a subtasks, if you disabled it, it would, on the UI in the topology diagram, would only disable the first one, or only show the first one is disabled, and all the rest it would show that they weren't. But they were, so it was working correctly functionality wise, but visually it wasn't correct. And so I thought, you know what, I can have a look at that and look into fixing it. And so there was some discussion, and so the issue was fairly old because it's happened in January and it'd been around for a while. And I saw it come up in conversation a bit in Slack, and so I thought, well, I can have a look. So I had a look into it, and I debugged it. And this was in June. But what I realized was that the problem is not in this main repo in Kestra. Like Will was saying, Kestra has lots of repos, and it was actually in. I'm going to open it now. It was actually in the UI libs repo. So what I did was I actually raised the issue on this repo because it affected both. The fix was in the UI libs repo, but it did affect the Kestra repo. So what I'm going to call the parent repo. And so I raised an issue on this. I didn't want it moved. I raised the issue on this. Then I also raised the pull request on that repo. So if I bring this over here, you can see the pull request is on the UI libs. And so when I raised the pull request, I said it was fixing the issue on the UI libs repo, but I also said it refers to the main Kestra repo as well. And yes, so my change is not that big. I'm gonna switch this tab to the changes tab, and you're gonna see it isn't that big. It's actually quite a small change. Really, really small. So what it was, I needed to see if the parent was disabled, then disable the child as well. The thing was, it didn't have the data of that information, so I had to send the data through. I didn't know Vue.js, so I used a bit of AI and just said, "Listen, I want to achieve. What can I do?" It didn't do it the best way, but it did give me ideas on how to navigate around Vue.js and so forth. And I ran it locally. One thing to note, because it was an NPM dependency and I couldn't deploy it to NPM, I had to link that locally. But there was documentation on how to do that on the UI libs project. So therefore, I was able to link it. So my local Kestra would use the local version of UI libs. And therefore, I could make changes and I could see it visually in the Kestra UI. And then that was it. I came up with a solution, and that was it. And that was great. I actually felt, like I said, it was a small in terms of changes, but I actually felt that it was a good contribution. So when it was raised, the pull request, if you know, not pull request, with the issue, when it was raised, if you see it's like grayed out, but actually when I came to work on it, it was slightly different. It was just a strike through. So as you can see, the strike throughs on the first one, but also on the others in that same nesting. And then I wanted to make sure that it was like super bulletproof. So I actually put one outside. So this is the subtasks, and I made this was disabled true, but then the one outside that was further down the flow shouldn't be effective. So I know the one above it, the parent wasn't affected, but I wanted to make sure anything below it, outside it, also wasn't effective. I wanted to make sure I didn't fix one bug and create a new bug, and it was causing that kind of bleed out into further tasks. But as you can see outside, hopefully people can see that on the live stream. Maybe I can zoom it in a bit more. There we go. So you can see that outside wasn't affected by it. So therefore, I didn't only check that I fixed it, I checked that I didn't break anything else. And that's one thing I recommend to everyone when you contribute to a project. Don't just check that you fixed something, check that you haven't broken something else that could be related. I appreciate you can't test the entire project, but do check that something that's very close to the changes you're making is working, is still working, and you haven't introduced a new bug. That's something that actually, as a maintainer for over 10 years myself, that's something I've seen all the time, where someone does fix something and it does work, but they've introduced one or two other bugs. So just check that you're not doing that. And I think that is a really important skill to have and to practice.
Very cool. One of my key takeaways from what you just showed us here, right, is open source contributions are not about your quantity, right? It's about the quality of your contribution. What was that, like 2 lines of code? But like the thing that bugs me the most, not just about like bugs in Kestra, but bugs in any project, right, is when you're using the UI and there's just like, it doesn't actually stop you doing what you're trying to do, but it's just displaying the thing incorrectly. And it's annoying. And that really bugs me. And being able to just make those little changes, because like, the thing is, even if it didn't work quite right behind the scenes, you can't necessarily see that. But every time you open a workflow that, you've disabled everything in parallel, you can just see every time that it's just wrong, and it's right in front of you the whole time. And so being able to go ahead and fix it with a couple lines of code, to me, that's a big win. And if someone, for example, contributes to a project like that and I was the maintainer, I'd be very happy. I'd be like, this is fantastic. I know you may not feel that you've added lots of value, but trust me, this is a really big, valuable change.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And just to build on what you were saying, is it's not just about code. As a new contributor to the project, you can go through the onboarding docs and make sure that there's no steps missing. For example, what I see a lot of the time is people say, clone the project. Then run npm run dev, for example, if it's using Next.js. And it's like, great, but there's no npm install. So they'll be like, I've got errors. And you'll see like that community having conversations. It's just to fix it. It's just one line in that documentation. Clone the repo that was already there, navigate into the project, run npm install, and then npm run dev. So it sounds simple and easy. If you're familiar with Node and npm, you'll probably just do that automatically without even thinking. But someone who's new, coming from a different language or new technology, won't realize that. And so I also want to say to look at documentation, make sure it's correct. Don't add punctuation and just for the sake of making a change, make a change. But if it adds a value, I think that's really important. Also, automated testing. So building on what Will was saying about, being really happy with the contribution. It doesn't matter about the size, it's the value it brings. Most projects are lacking automated testing. When I had my open source projects, I remember someone saying, I've added a few boundary conditions in the automated testing. I know it's not that helpful, but it's what I could do. I was like, what do you mean it's not that helpful? That's amazing. Like, I've been wanting to do it for so long and never found the time. So, thank you so much. So I would recommend people to look at the unit testing, the end-to-end testing, and cover those boundary conditions. Make sure the tests are up to date. Make sure the things are covered. A lot of the time they aren't. And trust me, that is probably, I think, one of the easiest way to add value to a project, because most projects are lacking that. And I really think that opens doors as well, because it shows that kind of, I don't know, wanting to add value to a project, but also the way you write tests, doing that happy path and that boundary condition is really, really important. Do things pass with the tests? Great. But do things fail with the test when they should fail? Take login, for example. I mean, just a simple example, but most people can get it, right? You add the correct username and password. Can you log in? Success, yes. But does it fail if you get the wrong, email address? Does it fail if you get the wrong password? Does it fail if the user doesn't exist? You kind of, for every success path, you've kind of almost got like 2 to 5 like what we call unhappy paths that need to be checked. And a lot of people forget those as well. So yeah, so much value that people could add.
Yeah, totally. And like going on what you were saying about like contributing to documentation, right? We've had Kestra is a good example of a project that is moving quickly and things get renamed, things become deprecated, things just get completely changed. And our documentation has grown a lot in the last couple of years and we miss stuff, right? We're human. We don't always spot everything that needs to get changed. And so I found it actually when I was contributing to a project. I can't remember what it was now, but it was something. I think it was like a Linux driver for fingerprint scanners. Really random, I know, but I was trying to run it locally, and the commands that they had, like the command itself was all correct, but like they just put the space in the wrong place or something. So I was like, oh well. I spent ages getting confused by this, realizing that it just needed to be like slightly tweaked. Let me just open a pull request so that someone else coming along doesn't have the same issue I had of getting really confused by this for 20 minutes and just have the correct command in the first place, right? Like it happens. And those are, if I'd come along later after someone had made that change, that would have saved me a load of time. So trust me, there might be changes that outdated screenshots in various open source projects, right? Yeah, exactly. That's a very easy win. But if the UI's changed, that old screenshot's not much help to people anymore. But if you understand what's changed and you feel like you could easily change that, then go ahead. That's a great place to start. Commands, another good one. And we got a good question actually up in the chat about types of contributions, right? How do you proceed when you want to propose a feature? Bug fixes might be low hanging fruit, but how can you provide more value to a project? Now, I'm going to re-screen share to Kestra. So we're in the Kestra repository, right? We have a lot of bugs, right? Where a lot of issues that are labeled bug, but there are issues that are labeled enhancement. So if maybe you don't necessarily, we'll talk about you specifically proposing a question, but you could look at enhancements and then you could also look at good first issue at the same time. If I actually put enhancement, I think this is how you used to get, yeah. No. Oh no, hang on, I've got to do label.
You have to label, yeah. It gets me every time as well.
There we go. So here, for example, someone said about adding a Shopify plugin, right? And I think there's a lot of information here on what exactly we're after. So all the information you need is here. Again, you can ask follow-up questions if you're unclear on the scope, but this is a really good example of if you want to make a bigger contribution, you don't want to just do a little bug fix, you want to get a bit more involved, then this is a good example of something. And here you can see someone has gone, can I be part of this one? Can I work on this? Again, this is a good thing to do too, because it just avoids people accidentally building the same thing. And then you get into this awkward situation where both people have made the same pull request. And now you're in this awkward, who do you accept? Try and avoid that. Always communicate if you want to be involved to stop people getting, clashing with things. And as you can see here, this person's actually already made the pull request, it looks like. So here they opened it today. Lots of files are changed. Already some feedback given, but that is the beauty of open source. So this is a good example of if you want to build a new feature, you want to contribute to something new to the product, to be like, yeah, I built this plugin. This is a good way that you can do that. Now, Eddie, before I jump onto features, you're proposing a new feature. Is there anything else you want to add on what I've just said?
Yes, just on the proposing part, I think if there is an enhancement issue and someone's like, oh, I've got an idea, I would say search the issues first for even the closed issues. So when, I mean, yes, thank you, Will. I was going to say, you've got to open, just it says state open, but I would remove state when you do the search. And so it's searching open and closed. And I would search for a keyword related to your proposed idea to make sure that it hasn't been discussed or proposed already. And so it's been declined, or for whatever reason, no, it's not a feature we want now, or it's a feature we want to do later. I remember when I had my open source projects, we had certain features that were requested a lot, but it was taking the project in a different direction. And so it was said, no, thank you. It's not somewhere we're going to go with it. But the thing is, it was requested quite often, and then it would have to kind of refer back to that issue. So I would say just a simple search can save a lot of the community and maintainers getting notifications. And it might not sound like a lot, but with 22,000 stars, there are a lot of people who are getting notifications, and in their timeline as well. I know stars aren't specifically directly for notifications, but also in their timeline as well. So yeah, just have a think about that. I would say do a check first, and it might not exist, and then you can raise the issue. But yeah, I would do it research first.
This is a good example. Now, this was a conversation that was had internally in our Slack in more detail, but I opened an issue about adding a new AI Copilot to no code. Now, we had a discussion. The AI Copilot is very much generating code, so it could work in the no code editor in the future, but it would be different. So this was closed, right? But this is a good example of seeing something that was proposed as a new issue. And again, if you have a suggestion, you can open a new issue and propose it. Other teams are always looking at these sort of things. But it can get closed as not planned or put on delay for now, or not something. Because the other thing to factor in as well is, like Eddie said, big project, Kestra, right? It's got a lot of commits, a lot of different files. And we don't, as much as we love to add new things, the more new things we add is more things we have to maintain and make sure don't break when we make one little change that touches all those other things, right? And it's basically, I was talking about this with our team, right? It's basically just going to, it's like an exponentially getting worse problem. As the project keeps getting bigger, it's just going to get harder and harder to maintain and like keep adding features. And so sometimes we might say no to a new feature, and that doesn't necessarily mean that your suggestion was bad. It's more just thinking about the longevity of, is this something that people will use? And is this something that we can realistically can maintain on top of making sure everything else works? But some new features might be easy to maintain and might be really good quality of life. So it's definitely worth opening the issue. Again, this could be a good discussion in our Slack as well, in like the contributors channels. Be like, hi, I think this would be a really great feature request. What do other people think? Because at the end of the day, we build features based on your, the community's feedback. So if this is something that you as the community feel strongly about, you can upvote issues, you can, add reactions to Slack for suggestions, make it clear to us that this is something that you want. So for example, that Shopify plugin, right? For example, if that was something that you specifically want, give it a thumbs up. It helps us understand, like, yeah, this is something we should prioritize, whether that's us as the team building it or an open source contributor. Make it clear to us that it's worth keeping this, and we don't accidentally, smack the closed as not planned button. So yeah, definitely bear that in mind. But if you do want to propose a new feature, but you're not really sure necessarily what, I would recommend playing around with the product, using it, see if it feels like there's things missing or things that feel clunky. I found I had loads of suggestions for Kestra once I started using it a little bit, because I could see how some aspects of the product, right, felt like they could do a little bit more, and other bits were fine as they were, right? Eddie, did you want to add to that?
No, I love that. I love what you mentioned about giving it a thumbs up. Because I see some people putting comments, go, I want this too, but then you have like 50 of those. Yeah. And it's just created more noise than support. So I think the thumbs up, no one gets notified, but it does show an interest. So I think it's a great tip. And then Praduma has also said communicate clearly. I know we've said that already, but you can't, we can't say this enough. Communication is key. Get the issue assigned to you before you start work. Do look into it. Make sure you can do the issue, but before before you start work, because you don't want multiple people, as Will said, doing the same piece of work. Don't sandbag. And what that means is don't get like 5 issues assigned to you and just block other people. Get 1 issue assigned at a time and no more. And don't ask for another issue until your pull request has been accepted. Because the goal is not to raise pull requests as many as you can. The goal is to get your pull request accepted and merged. Because once you raise it, it's not over. It needs to get reviewed. People will give you feedback. You might need to tweak it. And that is your priority, because it doesn't add value to the project until it is merged in. So that's more important. I would rather have 1 or 2 pull requests merged in from contributors, rather than having 10 pull requests from the same contributor raised, but none of them are ready to be merged because there's little tweaks that need doing. So yes, so many great points there. And Praduma also says projects have different roadmaps. So do have a look at the roadmap, save yourself time and also the maintainers. So great tip there. Thank you so much, Praduma.
What I'm going to show you now is a bad example of what not to do, because I've been subscribed to this thread that was originally an issue. It's been turned into a discussion on the Apple container repository. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, Apple built their own containerization framework for Mac. Basically lets you run Docker type containers using this new framework from Apple. Idea is supposed to be pretty optimized for running on Apple Silicon and whatnot. Quite exciting. It's quite new, but it's quite limiting. And one of the key things people have asked for is Docker Compose support, because at the moment you can only run individual containers. And as you can see, my inbox has been absolutely full of people just going, yeah, this would be great. Yeah, this would be great. And it's really annoying, because the thumbs up here with the 500 pluses, right? That, I think that's, and the upvotes here, I'm going to upvote it myself. I think that does a pretty good job of explaining that, yeah, people want this feature, but people just saying +1, this is not helpful.
No, this doesn't add value. It just adds noise, and then people end up muting the issue or the discussion. And then the problem is that if they mute it, then that community kind of discussion on this kind of dies down. So it has a negative effect. So absolutely, just give it a thumbs up or vote it up, but don't put a comment in.
This is from June, and there's still people, even like a couple of weeks ago, who are still like adding +1. Some people actually have useful things to add, but the issue is it disappears in between all of the people just saying, this is important for me. Like, yes, I don't need, like, maintainers don't need you to elaborate why this is important. They just need to know it's important, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's all good fun and games, and that's probably like more of a maintainers discussion as well on how they can maybe what's the word? Reduce their noise. Could be an interesting one. I've seen projects lock issues once they've been assigned, and they say that let's discuss on the raise a draft pull request, and let's discuss on there, because that less people kind of go and say assign to me, because you can't assign it to me. It's a draft pull request, but it stops having that assign to me, assign to me, assign to me. So if you want an issue assigned to you, as we said, it's a great idea to get it assigned to you. I think the other thing to do is make sure it wasn't assigned to somebody else like 1 hour ago or yesterday. You need to give that person, I believe, 2 weeks before saying, have you got any more progress with this? If not, we're going to reassign it to somebody else. But every project is different, so do check their contributing guide. But I still think you at least need to give it a week before saying, hey, look, there's no activity on this. Can I have it assigned to me? Don't give the maintainers more work after an hour. They've assigned it to someone, they assign it to you. So yeah, this helps you, what's the word? Get used to real world kind of enterprise projects, which is what you do in your day-to-day at work, right? At work, if you're working on a project that might be private, you're not going to say assign this to me if your colleague has just asked literally an hour before in the comment above yours. So this is all good practice. Like, we're not with open source, we're not trying to do things differently. This is kind of what you would do in the workplace as well. So I think it's all really good practices and skills to do.
And that's why companies love seeing open source contributions, right? On your GitHub, on your LinkedIn, on your CV resume, because it basically tells them that you've already got a bit of almost real world experience, right? You've contributed to a product, because contributing to these big projects, the code is such a small part of it, right? It's the teamwork and communication, right? Of actually being able to get everything lined up so that The people who are involved in maintaining it and reviewing it can do that part, making sure that the code itself actually integrates, right? It's the communication around it that's the skill that people often lack, right? And that's what open source can teach you, right? I could go and spend all day long, right, writing code on my own in my bedroom, but that doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to learn how I could contribute to in a massive team of developers. I'm going to only know how to work on my own by myself, and that's where Hacktoberfest comes in, right? To really help people who were like me when I was getting started in my development career, how I could actually take that a step further, because you can't just go and get a job necessarily if you have no experience, but open source can act as this beautiful bridge where you can go and get real hands-on experience without needing to go and get a job. And jobs often want you to prove that you can write code in a company setting, but if you've never done that, then how do you prove that, right? It's a vicious cycle, and open source helps you get out of that vicious cycle by giving you that opportunity.
Exactly. And I think most projects you're going to be working over teams. Like you said, with open source, it's not about highlighting that you're the best coder in the world. It's highlighting that you can communicate and collaborate with other people. And that's, it's a skill that we need to practice. I like to think that I'm okay at reviewing pull requests, but that I didn't wake up with that. That's something I had to perfect over time. And I saw how other people did it. And because it's not, if someone did something wrong in a pull request, you don't want to say you did this wrong. You want to say, have you thought about this? You need to give it feedback in a way that makes them want to grow themselves. And when people give me feedback, I'm always learning and so forth. So when people write on my pull request, if they say this is wrong, naturally you get a bit defensive and go, okay, well, what did I do wrong? Whereas if they say, I'm not sure if this is right. Eddie, do you think that maybe you want to look at doing it this way? I'm like, oh yeah, you're more receptive to making those changes. And so I think that takes time on how to communicate with people. And that's why when I've interviewed people in the past, I can tell if they contribute to open source or not, just on the way they, if I give them an issue to review or a pull request to review, I want to see how they would comment on it. And you can see if someone's contributed to open source because they have more empathy, they have more understanding because they've contributed, they've got feedback. And so, you can't see the other side until you've been there. So it's definitely worth doing. And just to reiterate, like Will said, it doesn't have to be the biggest contribution. More lines, more changes doesn't mean it's better. One line, or in my case, it was just 2 lines, had a big impact. And I think that's important. And just to give a few more, couple more tips on that note is, pull request and issues should be focused on improving one thing, not trying to do loads more. One example was in one of my open source projects a few years ago. It was a new project, new repo, and someone said, I'm going to create a contribution guide. I'm like, okay, brilliant. That'd be awesome. It's a new project. We haven't got one yet. Let's start. They said, okay, well, give me a month and I'll write about 4 to 5, 6 pages. And I'm like, a month's too long, 4 to 5, 6 pages. No one wants to review. I said to them, well, why don't you create the file and then just put in there, any questions, come and chat to us in Discord. We can get that out in the next 5 minutes. It already adds value because it means they can come and chat to us in Discord. And then there's a file that exists and other people can then start adding their own one line. So literally within a couple of days, we had a really nice contributing guide that was probably added to by like 10, 20 different people, but it was little and often. And, it probably had, 50 iterations. But it got there and it was, really good. And when people say, oh, Eddie, this is a great contributing guide. Well, I didn't do it. It was, crowdsourced from the community.
Yeah, it's a good point. If a maintainer receives a pull request with 10,000 lines changed, they're not going to review that. And they will want to make sure they're not just approving something and merging something that could be bad for their project. But it's going to drop down lower on the priority list, right? Because it's going to take them a good amount of time to go through that. But like you said, Eddie, your example with Kestra, right? That 2 lines, that's something that the team can very quickly look at and go, well, yeah, this is exactly what we need it to do. I can easily test this because it's only working in one very small isolated part of Kestra. But if you were like, oh, I've completely rebuilt everything to do with Kestra, then like the team's going to be like, no, this needs to be split into multiple chunks because there's so much changing here. It's just going to be too much for us to like review and actually be confident that when we merge this in, that it isn't going to just break everything. So small and little and often is the key to winning open source maintainers' hearts.
Exactly. It doesn't need to have loads of lines changed. The smaller, the better. Absolutely. I love that.
Awesome. Now we're running out on time, but what I would love to talk about is how do you deal with organizations that have lots of projects, such as Kestra, that has, I think we have over 200 repositories in this.
Wow.
I'm going to search by just public ones because we've got loads of private ones too. We can totally ignore those because they're not part of Hacktoberfest. And to be fair, some of these repositories themselves don't have the Hacktoberfest topic. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't be part of it. If you see it and you see an issue that you'd like to be a part of, just let us know. We can add Hacktoberfest to it. Now, the way Kestra works is we've got the main Kestra repository, right? This is where the core product is. That's where everything you normally see when you're using Kestra, that's in there. But all the plugins that you've used, Slack, Python, AWS, all of those have their own separate repository. So if you were to use the AWS plugin and discovered that maybe uploading a file to S3 wasn't uploading a file to S3 correctly or failing or something, then that would be a change made in the AWS repository. Now, I appreciate that if you're not familiar with this like I am, and I know, Eddie, this is relatively new to you too.
It is, yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask, because we don't expect you to know where to find things. Eddie had this with his contribution, right? His change was actually in our libs.ui repository. But you were told that once you were happy to make the contribution, right? You were pointed in that direction.
Yeah, exactly. I think that made such a difference, because it might be obvious to one of the people in the team, but as a new contributor, it wasn't obvious that it was in a dependency project.
Exactly. Now, if you do want to look for issues, you can also look on those specific repositories. I often make a lot of issues in here. Some of these are maybe quite, you could say, low-hanging fruit, easy. They have that good first issue tag. So it is worth having a look at some of those repositories too, because while you're not necessarily contributing to Kestra itself, you are contributing to a plugin, and the plugins, well, they basically, without plugins, Kestra doesn't really do anything. So they are a pretty important part of Kestra. So you can still make a good impact in these as well. And I don't actually know, but we have project boards, and you can see the project boards. And I'm pretty certain that if I was to like open incognito, you should be able to see them. They're not private, I don't think. Let me have a look. Should we have a look, see if it works?
Let's have a look.
I don't know why everything's taking so long to load. It's just GitHub, I promise.
That's fine. It shows that it's live and it's real, not recorded.
Yeah, it's really slow. There we go. So you can go to our issues board and you can click on good first issues in here. And the beauty of this is this will show you everything that is. So backlog's a good place to look. Between not just the Kestra repository, we can see in our plugin -DeepSeek, there is an issue there. The Google Workspace one about having an extra thing for the Google Gmail plugin, notifications, the Git plugin. So this is a good place to be able to see good first issues that aren't necessarily just Kestra related. And to be honest, I'd almost say that some of those are easier to start with, because if I go to the DeepSeek one, for example, and we actually go to the DeepSeek repository, if it loads, there's a lot less going on here, right? This is much smaller. It's much easier to run. The code wise, there's a lot less of it. So here, right, we've got one file that's 200 lines, right? That can still be quite a lot, but it's a lot less than what you would have to deal with in the main Kestra repository. So here you might find that one of the examples is incorrect or doesn't work quite correctly. You can easily contribute that here as a doc string, for example. You can also like see all of the different properties here. So I'm kind of the opinion that some of these plugins are actually good places to start, because it takes all of the complicated logic on how Kestra runs. That's all hidden in the Kestra repository. We can ignore that. But specifically just for this plugin, it's all in this one file. And so you can easily sort of see what's going on there. Now, if you can't find it, you can always ask the team. They'll be able to help point you in the right direction. I often get confused sometimes too on where changes can actually be hiding. But this is a good place to get started. Or maybe again suggesting a new feature like a new task. You might think the AWS plugin, actually Azure is a great example. Azure as a platform and AWS and Google Cloud, they all do millions of things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Kestra does all of those things. So you might go, actually, there's a new AWS feature with S3 or whatever, and I'd love to be able to add a task that will allow you to interact with that.
That's
Maybe,
true.
yeah. So that's my 2 cents on the situation. Anything to add, Eddie?
No, I love that because when I first started using Kestra, I wanted to monitor my website and I wanted to send me a Slack message and create a GitHub issue on the repo if if my website was down, and it would do every 5 minutes. And I was able to do that with kind of like 10 lines of YAML config because of the plugins. But if I wanted to do something specific, I was able to add a label to the GitHub issue.
Yeah.
But maybe I wanted to also add a comment, or I don't know, I can't think of anything at the moment, but that plugin might not have that functionality because it's not everyone wants it, right? And then, like you said, there's so many features on all these platforms that they can't do everything. But as someone needs it, that's a great way to contribute, and people could go have a look and see in the GitHub discussions or in the Kestra Slack to see what are people requesting. If they're out of ideas, there might be an issue raised already, and they can say, right, well, this plugin is working with, like you said, AWS S3,
Yeah.
but it hasn't got this feature. Oh, I could easily add that. So the plugin exists. It's all in one file, like you said. So that's a really, really a good way to add value and contribute as well. Just to add one more thing, I put it in the chat. I want to say to everyone, come and join the Kestra Slack. You can come and chat with the maintainers as well as the Kestra community there as well.
Just go to kestra.io/Slack and that will give you a link straight into our Slack. So super easy to come join. We're a friendly bunch. You can always ask us questions if you want to get started and you have absolutely no idea. I'd like to hope that after this hour of discussion, you've got some idea of how to get started, but we're super excited to sort of see how you get involved with Hacktoberfest, because last year was an absolute blast. So I'm excited to see what people get up to this time.
Absolutely. I'm so excited as well. It's something I'm going to keep an eye on, and I keep an eye on the Slack as well for Kestra, and to see what people are contributing and talking about.
Excellent. One last comment I will add is going off what Eddie said about the plugins. I am always using Kestra and I'm always discovering things, like you say, plugins that maybe are missing some of that more advanced functionality or extra properties or whatever, or tasks that just don't exist. And I'm always adding issues for these sort of things. So I'll make a good effort over the next month to add that good first issue, because trust me, like there are definitely things that in like the AI plugins, which is a new one for us, a lot of those are very basic, like they do the job, but a lot of these AI APIs are expanding every day to do even more, and it's just impossible for us to keep up. And so yeah, maybe there's something there that would be easy for you to add functionality, because OpenAI has maybe extended it, or like Claude has just had 4.5, Sonnet 4.5 just get released. I assume that will work in our plugin, but maybe that needs adding as well. So there's always things changing, and yeah, always keep an eye out on our good first issues for places you can get involved. But also, if you see something that is outdated, then suggest it. We're always open to suggestions. I can't wait to see what you get up to.
I love that. Yeah.
Awesome. Any final words, Eddie?
No, just start today, everyone, and think small. Don't think, right, today I need to make a big contribution. Maybe today, just go find an issue that you want to work on. That's your goal for today. Like, don't have to think about solving anything. Just find a few issues that you want to work on. And then maybe tomorrow, dig a bit deeper into that project and that specific issue. Go, this is the one I actually want to do. And then ask to get that assigned to you. Check it's not assigned to anyone else. And then the day after, then you can set up the project and start working on it. So just break it down. You got 6 to do over 4 weeks. So kind of, every 5 days, if you average it out. So you got 5 days. So day 1, find an issue or find multiple issues that interest you. Day 2, pick an issue, get it assigned to you. Day 3, set up the project. Day 4, start making the changes, the fix. And then day 5, raise the pull request. But most importantly, once you've raised the pull request and once you get feedback, do address those changes so you can get it merged. Your goal is not to raise more pull requests. Your goal is to get your open pull requests merged. That's your first priority. And then if you've got extra time and extra bandwidth, then raise more pull requests.
Excellent. Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Like Eddie and I have already said, super excited to see what you get up to. Don't be a stranger. Come and chat to us in Slack. And yeah, happy Hacktoberfest.
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.